haven't seen each other often. He gets up and he has real data. And I get up and I have make-believe data. And there's room for both of us in the world. So on the left, you see brand value increasing as the quality of tribal connection goes up. And just run any stock you want through this chart and you'll see that it works. That the Harley-Davidsons and the Apples of the world are over here because there's a high tribal connection. And then over here are people who might have the ability to generate a crowd, but it's not going to last. That what's really powerful, particularly for the people in this room, is the leverage that you get. Because it doesn't cost money to build a tribe. And once the tribe is in place, it grows organically and gets more powerful as it gets bigger. Here's a quick chart of Barack Obama's fundraising numbers. I've left out the last 2 months, which are way off the charts. And what you see is that someone with no real connections, with no real insider status, was able to generate millions and millions and millions of dollars from lots and lots of people doing it the new way, as opposed to doing it the old way. The Grateful Dead were doing this 40 years ago. We know that for at least 10 years, the Grateful Dead were the #1 grossing live act in the world. We're talking 40, 50, 60, $100 million in a year. Even though they only had one song hit the top 40 in their entire career. So how does that work? Because the Grateful Dead weren't in the business of selling records. The Grateful Dead led a tribe. They put on a rolling party. They went from city to city, and most of their fans went to every single one of the shows. Some came and some went, but that's what they were in the business of doing. That they gave people access to the music because it was the soundtrack for the tribe. That the dress that evolved, the dancing that evolved, the lingo that evolved, the way that they could talk to each other, all of which connected people. And that's why when Jerry died, there was this loss, not because I can't listen to the records anymore, of course I can, but because the leader of the tribe was gone, leaving a hole in the middle of the donut. Here's a site you probably haven't been to called Piano World. More than 1 million posts so far. People go to Piano World and post things like, this top one, I'm going to have a party on September 6th in Auburn, Maine. Come play the piano. And 20 or 30 people will come to this woman's house where she has a Steinway, and they'll all play piano for each other. And they may not know each other when they arrive, but of course they do know each other, because they've met on the boards and because they love this central idea. It also works at work. This is a woman named Mitch Matthews. Mitch is Senior VP of Marketing at Microsoft. She runs a tribe of 2,000 marketers at Microsoft. None of them report to her, maybe 3. But they all talk the same. They believe the same things. They wear the same clothes, even though they work in offices across the world. Once or twice a year, they get together for a big event, which is where I met her. And what was fascinating is, by creating this culture, this belief system, she is managing them by leading them, by creating an environment where they're all on the same page. So yeah, the tribe thing works at work as well. This is a hero of mine named Bo Taylor. I never got to meet Bo. He died a few months ago. Bo Taylor grew up on the wrong side of Los Angeles. He was a member of the Crips. And he spent his entire young life, before he was 25, fighting against the Bloods to the death. That is a really profound, clear tribe, and with all of the things that go with that. And after the riots in LA, he realized what was happening and devoted the rest of his life to trying to get the two tribes to work together, to do something other than be committed to destroying each other. This is a friend of mine, Megan Casey. She runs the tribe at Squidoo. Now, I have to use the word runs really carefully, because you don't get to tell people in the tribe what to do. But you can lead them. You can give them a platform. You can elevate the people who are making the biggest differences and help them have more influence on the others. And that's what she does all day. There are almost no organizations I know of that have people who do that all day. But once you commit an organization to it, or the leader of an organization to it, it changes what you do all day. How do you know who Gary Vee is? And look at this. Here's a guy with no media connections, starting with no investment, who now has millions of people around the world who listen to him and follow him when he wants to talk about what he's passionate about. And that what he's getting really good at is connecting you to each other, so that he actually has to spend less time doing it and more value is created. If we look at the nonprofit world, we've got Kiva versus United Way. Now, I'm a fan of United Way. My dad ran it as a volunteer one year when I was growing up. But the United Way is all about the old way of doing it. Top down. Payroll deduction. We'll go to big corporations and we'll interrupt you once a year to get you to pay us. Kiva said, wait, that's not the way it's going to work in the future. So Kiva doesn't want anyone to give them money. What Kiva says is, here's a bunch of people who want a loan. Here's a bunch of people who want to be connected to each other and make loans. Let's introduce them to each other and get out of the way. And as a result, fastest growing charity, probably in history, #1 charity online. So let's take a second here and talk about some of the dynamics of what's happening in this tribal thinking. It starts, as most of my thinking does, with the death of the factory. The factory thinking, making lots and lots of stuff and shipping it out, doesn't work like it used to. And factory thinking is built around the idea of a king. Royalty has affected the way we think about a lot of stuff. The king, his court, the decrees, following what the top leader says. And if you're a CEO of a major corporation, or you are a senior official in a major religion, you are used to standing at the front and shooting things at the back of the room. You have organized everything you're doing on this mindset. This mindset of saying, I am in charge, I worked really hard to get here, everyone else is downstream from me. The internet, of course, changes that. We don't have 6 degrees of separation anymore, we have 4, more and more people connected. But I'm not talking about how many friends you have on Facebook. It's irrelevant. I'm not talking about how big your LinkedIn network is. That's not a tribe. Those are people who really just won't complain if you spam them now and then. I'm talking about something more important. I'm talking about movements. Groups of people who want to make change happen. And that's important because things don't spread because you want them to. Things spread because other people want them to, because I want them to. I'm going to tell someone because it's good for me, not good for the guy who owns the Momofuku restaurant. So if you're the brand manager for Tide, you have a problem. And the problem is everything in your business is based on the old model, on your efficient factory, on your ability to get shelf space, on the money you have to buy ads. And if you're sitting there saying, I deserve a tribe, I deserve to lead people. How are we going to build a network for people who want clothes cleaner than clean? You're delusional. It's not going to happen. That doesn't mean you're going to go out of business, but it does mean you're not going to grow. Not going to grow like you used to. Because none of us care about cleaner than clean. And until you come up with something we care about, we're going to ignore you. Really interesting to think about the Whole Foods market. Whole Foods market fooled themselves into thinking they had a tribe. Because when you went to all their markets, the same sort of people were there. And they gave each other a little nod, and they shared a lifestyle. But then Whole Foods said, wait, we're public, we need to make more money. Let's raise the prices, build more stores, get more people to come. Instead of saying, wait a minute, what we can do for a living here is be purveyors and connectors to a special tribe, right? A smaller tribe. Instead, they went the old model. They acted like Procter and Gamble. They viewed their customers as just customers, people to make money from. So we stop here and say where we are. Tribes are faster and longer lasting and more powerful, but they are not free, right? They're not free because they take a huge amount of effort. And that effort is an expense. It's a commitment. It's a moral obligation. And that what most marketers will do, and will fail at, is they'll do it because they're going to make a living at it. They'll do it because it's the only alternative to doing what they want to do, which is buying more TV ads. And so the giant warning, and the fascinating thing, reading the book just before I sent it in, I said to myself, wait a minute, most of this book is not about what I just talked about for the last